Lacey Evans, though, her contract apparently expiring earlier this week and now apparently gone from WWE. Like I said, not exactly a massive story when it was first looking like this would be the case. She had tweeted, I think, on Monday, "Oh, when the clock strikes midnight, I'm out of here." She had posted a GIF indicating that her contract was expiring that night at midnight, and no one knew exactly what was going on. I wasn't on X, Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it, while Raw was going on, so I didn't see it when she tweeted it. That being said, though, it kind of became clear by the next day that she was indeed gone from WWE. Meltzer confirmed it. WWE didn't outright confirm it with a statement. Typically, they say, "Oh, this person's been released from WWE." Even when their contracts expire, we've seen situations where, like with Matt Hardy, for example, back in early 2020. Now, Matt Hardy is a lot different than Lacey Evans in the sense where he's a legend. There was a lot of speculation. Oh, would he go to AEW if he left WWE, blah, blah, blah. And obviously he did within a matter of weeks. When Matt Hardy's contract expired in early March, they put out a statement saying Matt Hardy's contract with WWE, they didn't say wasn't renewed, but they said that he was gone from WWE. It expired. We wish him all the best in his future endeavors, blah, blah, blah. Again, Matt Hardy, a legend. They probably did that to address the elephant in the room, whether he was going to AEW or not, just to make it clear that he was no longer with the company. There were people like Roderick Strong, whose contract seemingly expired at some point last year and then ended up in AEW, or maybe earlier this year, rather. Could have been late last year. We still don't know the exact timetable on that, I don't think. I'm not sure if that was ever cleared up by Roderick Strong himself or others, but he ended up in AEW just earlier this year after a year of inactivity. He was injured, I think, for a while. It might have just been a kayfabe injury. I'm not exactly sure, but he disappeared from WWE. We didn't see him again in NXT before popping up in AEW earlier this year. So people's contracts can expire and they can show up elsewhere. Lacey Evans was the only reason why we found out about Lacey Evans' contract expiring was because of Lacey Evans herself. And again, it wasn't exactly clear what exactly she was indicating at until we got the official report from Meltzer and others saying that she is indeed gone from WWE. Because sometimes when the talents say that on their Twitter, that can mean a million different things. Is it a storyline? Is she talking about something else? Was she just bullshitting? We've seen this same song and dance before, so I am skeptical. I apologize, but I am skeptical sometimes when it comes to this stuff. But all signs now indicate that Lacey Evans is officially gone from WWE. So here are my thoughts. Lacey Evans, as I tweeted last night, when I haven't really talked about it too much on Twitter in the last couple of days, since first seeing the story develop that she was probably on her way out of WWE. She was called up way too soon, back in late 2018. Now, I don't know exactly when she was hired by WWE. I remember seeing her on episodes of NXT in 2017 and 2018. The problem is that in that year and a half, 2-year-long period, she wasn't really anyone of note at all. She was brought in as an enhancement talent. She may have won 1 or 2 matches, maybe, but she was never focused on. I'm not even really sure if she was using the name Lacey Evans at that point. She was using her real name, I think, at that point in 2017. Macy Australia. I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, but the non-Lacey Evans name. She was using her real name for a little while there. They gave her the Lacey Evans name, and they called her up to the main roster randomly in late 2018. Did not make her debut until early 2019. It was part of that crop of competitors where it was like Heavy Machinery, EC3, Nikki Cross. There may have been, Lars Sullivan, remember him? And Lacey Evans. And Lars Sullivan had been around for a while. That one kind of made sense. And he was already on his way up to the main roster anyway. Lacey Evans never did anything of note in NXT whatsoever. So to call her up when they did, it just seemed like she wasn't ready from a in-ring standpoint, from a character standpoint. Now, to her credit, which I also tweeted last night, she did the character stuff extremely well. She came in as the old school, feminine character in early 2019. The sassy Southern Belle is what she was calling herself. And she played that role really, really well. And she wasn't exactly bad in the ring either. Now, granted, she had a great dance partner from out of the gate. Right after WrestleMania, she was the first feud for the undisputed women's champion, Becky Lynch. When Becky Lynch was at the peak of her popularity in early 2019, her first feud coming out of WrestleMania, whether people thought it was disappointing or not, it was a big opportunity for Lacey Evans. Now, whether she lived up to that opportunity or not is debatable. I think she did. Now, as I also tweeted last night, Lacey Evans in the ring was never as good as most of the women they had on the roster even then, and even now as well. With all the women they've brought back, there are a lot of women I would rather see built up and given opportunities to than Lacey Evans. Lacey Evans, the one thing you can't say was that she was not given opportunities. She was. And she, to her credit, did not squander every single one of them. Now, personal views aside from her end, because that was the one thing I think a lot of people got on her on in the last, if that makes sense, in the last year or so, were her own personal views and shit that she's tweeted and put on her Instagram and whatnot. I mean, I have my own thoughts on that, as just as far as how dumb some of those views can be, at least in my own opinion. And if you don't like it for that reason, that's perfectly understandable. I'm just talking from an on-air standpoint. I'm not thinking the entire WWE universe saw those posts and the stuff that she was putting on social media and thought to themselves, well, I'm not going to cheer for this woman anymore. I'm not going to care for this woman anymore because of because of her views on this or that or whatever it might be. I think it came to a point in the last year where it was clear that there was nothing more they could do with her. They tried turning her heel and babyface many times over. And at least on 2 occasions, I thought WWE themselves dropped the ball. But I'm also not going to sit here and say that WWE lost this massive, what could have been talent in Lacey Evans. I really don't think it makes much of a difference. We also don't know yet if this was WWE's choice or if this was her choice. If her contract expired, she opted not to renew, or, which is rare nowadays, WWE seems to renew everyone whether they want them around or not. This has been the case for a very long time now. There have been instances in the last couple of years where, contracts expire, they don't renew them. Typically, they just release people, but they could be taking the AEW route where it's not exactly a release, but when their contract comes up and they don't renew it, people don't call it release because it's not a release, technically, but they just don't want them in the company anymore, so they're really just not bringing them back. So it is a release in a different way. When I hear release, I think they're still under contract, they have time left in their deal, and WWE or AEW got rid of them. AEW does not release a lot of talent. We know this. WWE has not released a lot of talent since Triple H came back into the fold about a year ago. They have released people, Nigel McGuinness being one of them, Jimmy Smith being one of them, from the commentary teams last year. From a talent perspective, there really aren't a lot of talent that have left the company because they were released. They may have left the company on their own terms, contracts expired. This may have been one of those cases. WWE, for all intents and purposes, may have wanted to re-sign Lacey Evans. And in what world would they have wanted to have? I'm not really sure what value she brings to WWE at this current point. Again, she served. She has a great background. It was a great story that they incorporated into her character about a year and a half ago. I still remember coming out of WrestleMania 38, it would have been, about a year and a half ago in the spring of 2022, it would have been, that they brought her back as a babyface. She was gone for a year. She had another kid. She disappeared from television at the perfect time in early 2021. Because again, she was getting pushed around that time. At the time she got pregnant in early 2021. But it was in that fucking awful feud with Charlotte Flair over the Raw Women's Championship. And the whole, I may have had a kid with Ric Flair and we're having an affair with your father, Charlotte, blah, blah, blah. Just terrible television. And that was still in the Thunderdome era as well, so people weren't there to either not give a shit or boo it or whatever and give it the proper reaction it deserved because it was complete crap. So she got pregnant at the perfect time because, again, she probably would have won the Women's Championship. I think that was even the report at the time. She was supposed to face Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship at an elimination. I think it was either Elimination Chamber or Fastlane. And then she got pregnant. The whole thing was dropped, and we never went back to it, which is, again, no complaints on my end. But that was probably her one opportunity where WWE was actually going to put the championship on her. And at that point, it would not have made sense. Because then we would have been deprived of Rhea and Asuka at WrestleMania, where Rhea won the Raw Women's Championship instead. So thank God that happened. But again, she came back in 2022, about a year later, as a babyface. And it's not like they haven't tried that before. They did. They tried it back in, late 2019? She got drafted to SmackDown, and she was a babyface around then as well. And she'd only been on the main roster for about 6 months, but it became clear after a while, okay, she lost to Becky multiple times. She even main evented a pay-per-view. Lacey Evans, no matter what you thought of her WWE run, she can claim that she headlined a WWE pay-per-view alongside Baron Corbin, of all people, against Seth and Becky at that Extreme Rules show, I think it was, back in 2019 for I think it was a winner-take-all match for the Universal Championship and the Raw Women's Championship. But anyway, she feuded with Natalya for a while and whatever. But they tried her out as a babyface in 2019 and 2022. And honestly, both times, I thought she was getting over perfectly well. I mean, it really was not her fault at that point. In 2019, they gave her all the momentum in the world. That was back when we still had fans. They gave her the match against Bayley at the Royal Rumble. Maybe they got cold feet because the match wasn't really that good. Bayley retained, and Lacey Evans was never again considered a challenger for a championship up until 2020. Really ever, I was going to say. I mean, again, they turned her heel in 2020, or soon after in 2020, I think it would have been. 2022, they try her again as a babyface. They incorporate her actual story where she was in the Marines and she served and all this other sort of stuff, and her parents were like abusive, and it kind of felt like they were capitalizing on that and exploiting her story. That's the word, exploiting. I always forget the word, but it felt like they were exploiting her story, exploiting her trauma, and putting it on television. And again, at least for a little while, it worked. They were doing the vignettes, and I thought they were really well done. It helped us kind of it gave us a view of who the real Lacey Evans was. For the most part. Not the entire view of Lacey Evans and some of the shit that I said earlier that she was posting on social media, but it gave us a reason to care about her again and gave us a reason to cheer her. And that was back when Vince McMahon was still in charge. It was so fucking bizarre because it really felt like initially that they were going to use her to become they were going to make her a breakout babyface, which would have been great, a fresh face in that women's division, title picture on SmackDown, Raw, whatever it was going to be. But this is the one opportunity. Again, in 2019, they kind of ruined her babyface momentum as well. This instance, more than any other in her career, was where WWE really fucked up any momentum that they had with her. In the sense that they put her on Raw, they had her switch brands, and apparently the plan the whole time was to turn her heel, was to endear her to the audience and then use that as a way to turn her heel, which makes absolutely no sense. I remember reading those reports and thinking that is beyond fucking dumb, but they went in that direction anyway. They did it anyway. And it didn't cause people to boo her. It just caused people to go back to not caring about Lacey Evans. Again, I'm not saying WWE completely missed the boat with Lacey Evans and they missed out on their chance to have a multi-time women's champion and whatnot. I'm just saying, like, it felt like at that time when there really weren't a lot of fresh faces in the title picture, you had Lacey Evans, who isn't great in the ring, but the character stuff and what they were doing with her seemed to be working. She got great reactions when she did come out. And then it became evident that they were exploiting what they were, her whole story and trauma and whatnot. And then she was kind of putting a heel spin on it while also parading out there as a babyface. I remember it seemed like she was going to win Money in the Bank last year. It was over 4th of July weekend. She was on the show a lot. She was off the show for like a fucking month and then came back. Again, they did everything wrong with Lacey Evans by having her switch brands constantly, go back and forth between being a babyface and a heel, and then she lost anyway, and that was pretty much it. And then Triple H took over. He lost complete interest in Lacey Evans, and I don't exactly blame him. I mean, she was in NXT at one point, but it's not like, you gotta remember, Lacey Evans was not someone that he was focusing on at that time in that NXT women's division, because there were women that were better than her, which is also why they were not focusing on her last summer, because there were women that were better than her. He did not care about using her story to get her over, because again, they tried that, and they completely messed it up. I'm not going to say it didn't work, because they took that route and they completely messed it up. That, to me, was their last chance. So when they tried to repackage her earlier this year with like the Sergeant Slaughter-esque gimmick, that to me was the final nail in the coffin. That was never going to work. It was dumb. I was there for some of those matches where they used her in squashes to put, they put her over some people over, like local athletes and stuff. Never really led to anything. They brought her back at a time where they were already on the road to WrestleMania. They already had other plans for other people. She wasn't on the card, I don't think. It was a random time to bring her back. The crowds did not fucking care. And the whole thing with Sergeant Slaughter happened online, which again isn't really her fault, because she actually served. Sergeant Slaughter did not. He accused her of stealing his gimmick, which I'm sure it's not her fault. I'm sure it was more of a WWE issue. She got into it a couple times on Twitter with the daughter of Sergeant Slaughter. Just completely ridiculous stuff. All of this to say, WWE is not missing out on a major talent in Lacey Evans. It is a bummer to see her go in the sense where I feel like she could have had some success if they booked her better at certain times. But she was also not this exceptional talent in the same way that Sasha Banks was, or a lot of the women they have currently on their roster are, but they have not used them in the right way. I think Michin, Tegan Nox, Candice, Piper Niven are all better in the ring than her. Now, she, to her credit, like I said earlier, she had a great character. And she got that character over, both as a heel and as a babyface at various points in her career. She accomplished very little. I'm not even sure if she ever won a championship. She may have been a former 24/7 champion. If not, she never won a title. She was never tag team champion, Raw Women's Champion, SmackDown, NXT Women's Champion. She never won any of those championships. She could have if they booked her better. But I'm not sitting here now thinking that WWE dropped the ball on Lacey Evans so many times. They did a couple times, but not enough times for really it to feel like they missed out on a major talent. They have enough talent as it is. Hopefully this does not open a spot up for someone to get called up and not be used, because we've seen that many times already. Indy Hartwell wrestled on Raw this week. First time her singles match on Raw. She's been cleared for a while, I would think, because she was in that tag team turmoil match like a month and a half ago. So it's not like she's still hurt, I don't think. Maybe she was, I don't know. But only just now wrestling her first singles match on Raw. And she's been on the main roster for fucking 4 months. I mean, that just doesn't make much sense. Tegan Nox has yet to wrestle a singles match on Raw since being drafted from SmackDown. They have Emma as well. I mean, there's a lot of women on both shows they are doing absolutely nothing with. Lacey Evans was one of those women at this point I just did not care. She was one of those people where whether she was released and they opted not to renew her contract or she just wanted to leave on her own, there was nothing more they could do with her. As far as where she goes from here, I honestly don't really know. To me, it seems like Lacey Evans comes across to me as a WWE or bust type of person, where if she's not wrestling in WWE, she probably doesn't have much interest in wrestling anywhere else. Mandy Rose also comes across that way to me, not in a bad way, because I do feel like Mandy Rose will be back at some point. And Mandy Rose, to me, had a lot more potential when she got fired for very different... I mean, she was actually fired. Lacey Evans was not fired by the definition of the word. Mandy Rose had a much higher ceiling. Or did I say Mandy Rose? Mandy Rose had a much higher ceiling when she was let go late last year, following the success of her NXT run and whatnot. Lacey Evans did not. She really had nothing going for her up until her departure earlier this week. Mandy Rose did. Mandy Rose should be back at some point. They should bring her back eventually if she wants to come back. I don't know if I see a Lacey Evans anywhere else. I mean, she really should not go to AEW. They have enough women as it is, and she does not come close to being the best of that bunch. Maybe an Impact. I could see her maybe going to Impact. NWA might be more up her alley in terms of the type of people they bring in anyway. I mean, they got fucking Tyrus as their world champion. They got a great collection of talent over there. I say that sarcastically. NWA does have some great people, but some of the people they have on those shows are just highly questionable. Lacey Evans might fit in right in the NWA, to be completely honest with you. Also, the old school character and having served and whatnot, I mean, that might fit in like a fucking glove in that NXT women's division, and that rather NWA women's division. Maybe she's the one to dethrone Camille. Coming up this weekend, next weekend, at the NWA 75 pay-per-view. I know Sean Ross Sapp said that on Twitter. Camille already has an opponent in Natalia Markova, who is also better than Lacey Evans. But anyway, I kid. I could see her maybe going to Impact. Honestly, NWA, joking or not, might be the best possible fit for her. But my guess at the end of the day, is that she's probably not going to be wrestling at all. She has a lot of other, I would assume, avenues of financial success, and she could start her own OnlyFans and stuff, which she may have been already doing. I had seen people talking about that. But she can either start up that or just do something completely different. Again, she has a lot of... Lacey Evans seems to be a smart woman in this. I mean, in some ways, maybe not, based on some of the stuff she was posting, like we said. But I could certainly see her being successful in other avenues and doing other stuff non-wrestling related and being successful there. So she probably doesn't necessarily have to go to an Impact or an NWA or even continue wrestling, period. This might have been it for her in the ring. Which, if it was, she didn't have a completely awful run in WWE. She did last 4.5 years in the main roster. She was in the WWE system for 5, 6, 7 years. She was there for quite a while. Not a lot of success to her name, but she was around for a long time where she did make a little bit of an impact. Again, she got consistent television time for most of her career, even having a kid and coming back, which is also commendable. She should be, commended for that. But at the same time, there are other women at this point that I would like to see featured over Lacey Evans. So her leaving, to me, is not the biggest blow to that WWE women's division.